All right, we'll get back to leadership and stress in just a moment, but in his address to the nation last night, President Ramaphosa said the adjusted Level 3 regulations would serve to keep the economy afloat and that with few exceptions, businesses can continue to operate as long as all relevant health protocols and social distancing measures are adhered to. The question, of course, is will businesses be able to navigate and survive these new measures? Dr. Azar Jammine is a regular contributor to the program, chief economist, founder of Econometrix. Azar, good afternoon to you and thank you. Let's start with the alcohol industry. First of all, up in arms, very concerned, talk of job losses, utter decimation. But did he really have a choice?
In many respects, I suppose he didn't have a choice, but I think he's reacting maybe a little too late. I think the trends were in place about a month ago, and yet the government has only reacted now. And I believe that if the government had reacted a little earlier, we would not have seen the rate of increase in infections that we have seen, and more especially the spread of the infections into the hinterland, which was not the case previously.
Focusing just on the alcohol industry, we've just had a live report from a restaurant, a tavern in Tembisa here in Johannesburg, talking about the devastating impact that it's going to have on business. When you make a decision like this, it has an impact, a negative impact, up and down the supply chain, doesn't it? And perhaps more worryingly, the recovery time is going to be long.
Without a doubt, there's going to be a significant impact, not least because the industry was negatively affected by lockdowns level 5 and 4 earlier in the year, which exerted a devastating blow. And no sooner has the industry been starting to recover that it is being hammered yet with another body blow. And it's that kind of thing that is going to wreak a lot of devastation. And some of the weaker businesses will go under as a consequence of this.
What do businesses then need to be thinking of? To all intent and purposes, operations start again in earnest within the next 10 days. What can businesses do then to start thinking about mitigating risk and future-proofing?
The alcoholic products industry has possibly been guilty of not trying to exert some influence on users of its product sufficiently. That is the one thing. But from the other perspective is they must realize that this is not a permanent situation and that yet again we are likely to see the ban being lifted in the not too distant future as infections start coming down. And in fact, in the last 3 days, there has been a fairly dramatic reduction in the rate of infections with COVID, if one is to believe the data that are released, from a peak of 14,700 per day, I think, on Boxing Day, to levels of 7,500, the most recent figures. Now, it's too early to actually conclude that this is a new trend, but it does provide hope because it's also a phenomenon that is being reflected internationally, that, these waves do peter out after a while. And so businesses just have to hang in there in the hope that at some point in time there will be a recovery.
Difficult to hang in, I guess. More broadly and beyond the alcohol industry, Dr. Jammine, the President saying that the adjusted Level 3 regulations would, and I quote, serve to keep the economy afloat and that with few exceptions, businesses could continue to operate. Obviously, there are certain caveats attached to that. I suppose it could have been a lot worse.
It could have been a lot worse, and we only need to go back to April and May this year, where levels 5 and 4 were in place. Those were devastating and in retrospect unnecessary to actually try and break the back of the COVID-19 virus. I believe that the government is not telling us this, but that it is extremely concerned about the ability of the healthcare facilities in this country to cope with any further increase in the rate of infections. But at the same time, it has not returned to the horrifically stringent levels of lockdown that we had in April and May, which closed down big sectors of the economy, such as mining, manufacturing, construction. We haven't got that in place this time round. Unfortunately, and this is what I find is so unfair about the COVID crisis, is that it is impacting on small businesses, and especially small businesses in the services arenas, such as restaurants, and more so on the tourist industry. But there is a lot of criticism to suggest that the government is being inconsistent in locking down beaches where the ability to transmit the infections are relatively restricted because of the open spaces, and yet keeping things such as casinos going where people, and to some extent restaurants, where people are in confined spaces. And that is why the conclusion that I can only draw is that they are trying to prevent people from going on holiday to put too much strain on the healthcare industry.